Hello students, it's nice to meet you all after a long time. So here we begin with one of our classical literature pieces. Today I would like to teach Virgil's Aeneid to you, and here we begin with book 1, lines 81 to 123, entitled Aeolus Raises the Storm. So I'm sure you know whatever happened earlier. After the Trojan War, the city of Troy was set in flames and most of the heroes were killed, and Aeneas was destined to leave his home city, the city of Troy, and he was destined to go and find a new country called Rome. So he was on this mission, and goddess Juno did not like the idea of Aeneas annihilating Carthage, which was her favorite city. So she wanted to disturb the journey of Aeneas so that her favorite land will not be distracted by him. So she went to the extreme of approaching Aeolus, the god of wind, to destroy him on his way to Carthage. So here Aeolus, the god of wind, promised to Juno that he will kill Aeneas for her sake. So now Aeolus raises the storm. That is what we are going to see in these lines. When he had spoken, he here refers to Aeolus. He reversed his trident. Trident, you know, it is a weapon which has 3 pointed edges. In Tamil or in Hindi we call it the Trishulam or Trishul. So this is a weapon of the gods. Using this trident, he strikes a hollow hole in the mountain. So the mountain had been containing the wind, and now that he's kind of struck it off with the trident, the wind blows out through it with great force, and the winds form ranks. So now it is like he is the commander, Aeolus is the commander, and the winds form ranks, you know, according to their levels, and they rush out of the door and whirled across the earth. The force of the wind is so much that they whirl. Whirl means it's a circular rising motion of the wind, and it creates whirlwind across the earth. They settle on the sea, east and west, and the wind from Africa. Africa is southwards towards them. So from all 3 directions, this wind is about to attack the ships of Aeneas, together with thick storms. Storms is something that human beings do not have any control over it. Especially people who are stuck in the sea will definitely succumb to its force. These storms stir it all from its furthest deeps and roll vast waves to shore. So far they were engulfed by wind from all 3 sides. Now the force of the wind is making the water rise up as a vast wave and follows a cry of men and a creaking of cables. The cry of men here refers to the sailors, the men who have accompanied Aeneas, and a creaking of cables refers to the cables of the ship. Suddenly clouds take sky and day away. So as such we are looking at a daytime scene. But now, due to the instructions of Aeolus, the clouds form a thick cover above the earth, and this does not allow light to penetrate into that ocean in such a way that it looks like a dark night. Suddenly clouds take sky and day away from the Trojans' eyes. So the Trojans' eyes here refers to all the sailors of Aeneas. Dark night rests on the sea. So now it seems like as if it were a dark night. If thunders from the pole and the aether flashes thick fire. So pole, it refers to both the North Pole and South Pole. So now there is storm everywhere. Waves are rising high, and thunder. Now this refers to the sound effect of that particular, you know, the calamity. And the aether. Aether here refers to that area or zone above the clouds. Nothing but emptiness, but it is beyond the clouds. So this is one surface of our atmosphere, and aether flashes thick fire. So there is waves everywhere, storms everywhere, and now to add to the lightning effect, you have flashes of thick fire from the sky. And all things threaten immediate death to men. So looking at this situation there, the sailors there, including Aeneas, they understand that it is time for them to die, because there's nothing to bail them out of this calamity. Instantly Aeneas groans, he cries out with pain, his limbs slack with cold, because the atmosphere is completely cold and he could not stretch his limbs. And all that he can do is that he's stretching his two hands towards the heavens. You can understand the position, you just call out to gods for help. He cries out in this voice. Imagine a great Trojan warrior is crying out, "Oh, 3-4 times fortunate, where those who chance to die in front of their father's eyes under Troy's high walls." Death itself is a pathetic situation, and dying in front of your own parents' eyes is beyond pain and sorrow, and it's almost like that's the worst situation in which a person can find oneself in. But here he says even that will be a better situation rather than being here and to die like this. And he says, and he refers to Troy's high walls, to die in front of their father's eyes under Troy's high walls. When he says in front of father's eyes, he refers to the death of Hector. Hector was the son of Priam, brother of Paris. So he was killed by Achilles in Troy. So Troy is their homeland, and in front of his own father he was killed. So that was a pathetic death of Hector. And now here Aeneas says even that was better when compared to the way he is about to die now. And he calls out to Diomed, son of Tydeus, bravest of Greeks. Diomed belongs to their opponent team. He is a Greek warrior. He is a great Greek warrior. And it is said that he was an unsung hero of the Greeks. So we have so many instances about Diomed's life, like the things that he did, the way he stood by Agamemnon and Menelaus, and especially with Odysseus and Achilles. So there are so many references to his deeds, like he stole the Palladium. The Palladium is like a symbol of protection for a city or for a country. So he stole the Trojan Palladium, and which was later on handed over to Aeneas so that he could take it along with him to Rome, and there people started to worship. So this man has religious importance as well as a warrior. He had his own significance. And then he says, "O Diomed, son of Tydeus, bravest of Greeks." So when it comes to Greek history, people talk about Achilles, Menelaus, Agamemnon, but Diomed as such is not that very popular. But here he refers to him. "Why could I not have fallen at your hand in the fields of Ilium?" Now he says, it would have been better for me if I had been killed by you. Where? At the fields of Ilium. "And poured out my spirit." Poured out my spirit refers to breathing his last there at his hands. Where fierce Hector lies. So Hector, brother of Paris. So where Hector lies is where Hector is dead and buried now. "Beneath Achilles' spear." Beneath Achilles' spear is that this refers to how Achilles killed Hector, and Achilles killed Sarpedon also. So who is this Sarpedon? Sarpedon, it's like he is a son of Zeus, that is known. But there is a little debate about whose son he actually was, because Zeus had many consorts, or in other words spouses or wives. So here there are references to two names, Europa and Lacedaemon. So whose son he is? Zeus' son, of course, no doubt about it. But who was his mother? That is still a debate. So Sarpedon's death. So he says it would have been better for me to have died at their hands, and there is a YouTube graphical depiction of Sarpedon's death, which I have shared in this video, and you can also look up on the internet for that. Just have to say, type Sarpedon's death. Where Simois rolls. Simois is a river. And in those days, when you're talking about history, civilization, religion, nothing exists without the mentioning of a river. So here is the river is mentioned, and YouTube has pictures of this river as it is now, and I've shared it. You can also look at it. And what did the Simois do? It swept away so many shields, because maybe it was very closer to a battlefield. It swept away so many shields, helmets of the warriors, and brave bodies of men in its waves. So lot of rivers, they are known for having fertilized places, led to agriculture. But here is a river which has swept away not just shields and helmets, but bodies of brave warriors. Hurling these words out, and now that was the way Aeneas was crying out, considering how his death should have come to him a lot more earlier. And now then there's a description of the this present. So now there's a description of the actual scenario there. Hurling these words out, a howling blast from the north strikes Squire on the sail. So soon after he cries out like this, and then there is a strong gushing wind from the north which strikes the sail or the mast of the ship. The wind steers the ship that way. So if the wind has to be in their favor, and clearly it is not in their favor right now, and lifts the seas to heaven. So you can imagine something like a tsunami. Tsunami, at least we can measure the height of the waves, but here it just directly pulls the water up to heaven, skyward. The oars break. The oar is the only mechanism with which they can steer the ship and their other boats, but now all those oars are broken into pieces. Then the prow swings round and offers the beam to the waves. The prow refers to the front part of the ship. If you want to imagine, you can just imagine the ship Titanic, wherein you find the jutting sharp end of the ship. That's the front side, and that is called a prow. And the rear side of the ship is called a stern. So here they refer to many parts of the ship, which I have given as as a depiction, as a graphical depiction, as a diagram. You can have a look at that. Then the prow swings round and offers the beam to the waves. So when you say a beam, it refers to the widest part of the ship, generally little away from the prow. So that is again offers itself to the waves. So that is again becomes vulnerable. A steep mountain of water follows in a mass. So you can just imagine this water leashing out from everywhere, and wind gushing not only their spirits but also their vessel or the ship. Some ships hang on the breaker's crest, to others the yawning deep. So this wind is hurling the ships in different directions, and it goes and rests itself in a crest. And the others, the yawning deep. Yawning, the act of opening your mouth so that you pull air inwardly. So now the water is also pulling the wind inwardly, and shows land between the waves. And now when there is wind moving towards the depth of the ocean, the water moves its way. The water moves away, paving way for the deepest bed of the ocean to be visible. The surge rages with sand, now in such a way that there is sand underneath the sea, and this sand rises above. Already there is mountain of water there, already there are gushing winds, and now the sand also rises above. The south wind catches three and whirls them onto hidden rocks. The south wind, the wind coming from the southern direction, here it refers to Africa. The south wind catches three and whirls them onto hidden rocks, and it just creates a swirling motion, and everything is just like that thrown apart. The rocks the Italians call the altars in mid-ocean, a vast reef on the surface of the sea. So here he refers to the reefs, like not fishes, not plants, but it is some kind of an organism that is there in the sea, and it generally forms layers. 3. The east wind drives from the deep to the shallows, and quicksand, a pitiful sight. You know what is a quicksand? If somebody, by mistake falls into it, the land will swallow them alive. You would have watched it in films and all. So there are quicksands also. Even if you try to jump off from the ship, they might get caught in a quicksand. And quicksand, unless and until somebody pulls them, rescues them, they cannot survive. Dashes them against the bottom, covers them with a gravel mound. So they are in the middle of an ocean. Instead of being drowned in water, now they are all covered by gravel. Gravel means a soft sand that refers to the soil of the sea. A huge wave toppling strikes one astern. So astern refers to the rear side of a ship, in front of his very eyes. So now Aeneas is able to see that. So all around it's a very inclement condition for them. And now again a wave strikes his ship from behind, and one carrying faithful Orontes and the Lycians. Orontes, he is referred to as a Bactrian nobleman, and Lycians refers to the people who geographically come from Turkey. All these are all countries adjoining, Greece and Troy. The steersman's thrown out and hurled headlong, face down. Now he is referring to the condition of the people who had been steering the ship, the steersman. They are thrown out and hurled headlong. Headlong means, when you're thrown, your head reaches the surface first. So they are thrown upside down, face down. But the sea turns the ship 3 times, driving her round. It will take several hours for a ship to turn itself around, but here within a fraction of a second it is turned thrice. So you can imagine the force of the wind in place, and the swift vortex swallows her in the deep. And now there is a sink there, and you pour water, and you know how the water goes down in a circling motion. So there is that kind of a vortex created in the sea, and within this vortex, what is going within the vortex? The ship itself. It was turned around thrice, and now it is caught in the vortex, and it goes down into the farthest depth. Swimmers appear here and there in the vast waste. So swimmers here refers to the people who were toppled off the ships and who are still trying to swim and get across this panic situation. There in the vast waste. Vast here refers to the wide, vast ocean. And now, why is it called a waste? Because it's just going to kill them, and it's not going to be of any use to them. Men's weapons, planking. So the ship was actually carrying many weapons too. Planking Trojan treasures in the waves. So now all these weapons were strewn apart on the ocean bed. Trojan treasure in the waves. So these weapons were their treasures. And where is it all now? Just like that, lying strewn on the waves. Now the storm conquers Ione's tough ship. There is another ship. Already we saw there was one ship carrying Orontes, another ship carrying the Lycians, and now there is a mention of another person's, a confidantee of Aeneas. His ship is also attacked now. Ione's tough ship, now Achates, and these are the names of the people who were traveling along with Aeneas. Now that in which Abas sailed, and old Elateus. These names are a little difficult because all these are Trojan names, Latin names. So you might have difficulties in pronouncing it and getting the right spelling, but please do it. Their timbers sprung in their sides. Now the prow was attacked, the stern of the ship was attacked, the beams were attacked, and now the timber. Now the ship is nothing but timber. Timber is what? A piece of wood. It refers to the pieces of wood. Those were used to construct the ship. So the ship is nothing but pieces of wood right now. all the ships let in the hostile tide. Hostile tide is, sometimes you always say the tide is in their favor, means things are in their favor, which will complement their well-being and growth. But now it is a hostile. Hostile refers to hatred. So now it is a hostile tide and split open at the seams. So now everything is torn apart, everything is split apart, and now they what do you think happened to them? So this is line, those are lines from 81 to 123. So with that I have explained this poem to you, and now you can imagine a whole lot of people, all warriors who have no homeland to go back. All that they know is that they have to go in the direction of Carthage, and now the winds are not in their favor. They have already earned the wrath of Juno, and Aeolus is against them. It's daytime, but it seems like nighttime. The sailors are dead, the ships are devastated. Now what do you think they are going to do? So this is the end of the poem, and we'll have to read the next stanza to understand what happened to them. So with this suspense, I bid you all goodbye. Thank you.